We all know it in our bones that our democracy is at risk.
A stark warning ahead of the midterm election that will give voters an opportunity to indirectly express their views on his presidency and the current direction of the country. We get a better understanding of the context with Chris Krebs, the founding director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Talk about some of the timeline that brought us to where we are today.
Back in 2016, I was at Microsoft and we were tracking a number of threat actors that were using different techniques to try to break into email accounts and compromise credentials of notable officials that were either related to campaigns or to political parties. And then you have all these alerts and reports and announcements coming out of the federal government. It becomes clear that the Russians were attempting to interfere in the 2016 election. And ultimately, in January of 2017, the intelligence community released what's known as the Intelligence Community Assessment. That in great detail and in unclassified manner details how the Russians attempted to interfere in that 2016 election. And there were three main approaches in those efforts to interfere. The first one was attempting to, scope out and get into election equipment, the systems that actually support the administration of elections at the state and local level. The second was a hack and leak campaign focused on the Democratic National Committee and on the Hillary Clinton campaign and some of her staffers, John Podesta namely. And then third and finally was this more kind of vague, almost disinformation campaign that was trying to attack our hearts and minds and have us lose faith in ourselves in the American experiment and ultimately attack democracy. And
Krebs also explains how these threats keep growing and risks increasing with every passing election.
And so what was in 2016 a single foreign actor, now we have through 2018. Again, it was Russia. 2020, we had a mix of Russia. We had a dash of Iran, a sprinkle of China. 2020 was a pretty active space.
He points out that the latest threat to emerge from the 2020 election is the most toxic and dangerous one yet.
But it's what happened after the 2020 election and even today, where we really see that we actually don't necessarily have all the tools that one might hope for. Our intelligence services are well equipped to address some of the threats from foreign actors. But when it comes to domestic threats to elections, we're still scrambling a little bit, and we are hindered in part by some of our own constitutional protections, of course.
According to Krebs, the domestic threat will pose many challenges to Americans building up to the 2024 presidential race.
Looking forward into 2024, I see four threats or risks to the election. First is this continued delegitimization of the 2020 election results and whether President Biden was duly elected has continued to calcify, further reaching down into just the general population and mainly in the Republican Party. The second threat that I'm concerned about is this delegitimized concept is then manifesting in threats to election workers. We're seeing intimidation and threats against voters themselves. The third threat that I'm concerned about is the actual infiltration of the election administration process by radicalized and activated people. The fourth main concern I have is that as we're all domestically kind of at each other's throats, it really makes it quite easy for those that may wish us harm. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of attack surface to just further exacerbate and magnify and amplify the degradation of discourse and create further chaos.
With officials across the country warning that elections may drag on for days or weeks, there is no doubt the outcome will influence the playing field for the 2024 presidential campaign, and especially the odds of Donald Trump running again. Yakut Tobias for CI Radio News.